2 days before the wedding, I was setting the table in our modest kitchen, folding napkins into neat little triangles. The air smelled of rosemary chicken and hope. This dinner wasn't just about pasta and polite smiles. It was my last-ditch effort to fit in. I'd tried for months to blend into his family, swallowing cold glances and tighter smiles. I convinced myself that maybe, tonight, they'd finally see me. Not as the outsider, not as the other, but as someone they could call family. I glanced at the framed wedding invitation on the counter. 48 hours away. All the compromises, all the late-night cries in the car after awkward dinners. I told myself they were worth it. For love. For him. For the idea of family. I believed somehow this dinner would be different, that maybe the ice would thaw. That hope cracked the moment he checked his phone. We were slicing bread together, and I noticed how his shoulders tensed. His face didn't change much, just enough. He blinked once, too long. Then, silence. "Everything okay?" I asked, half watching him, half praying it was nothing. He shook his head, offered a half smile. "Yeah, just work stuff." But it wasn't the kind of pause that followed a work email. It was the kind that fills the air when something's not right. You live long enough, you learn to smell it. And this stunk. When something smells fishy, I muttered under my breath, "It usually is." He caught that, gave me a look, but didn't argue. I leaned in. "What was that message?" He hesitated, like a kid caught sneaking out. "Nothing important?" "I'd like to see it." He shifted. "It's in Italian." "I have Google Translate." Silence. He handed me the phone, reluctantly. The message glared back at me. From his mother. "Porta la porca grassa a cena." My breath caught. I didn't need a dictionary, but I translated it anyway, just to be sure. "Invite the fat pig to dinner." Everything inside me stilled. My skin burned cold. I looked up. He avoided my eyes. "She was just joking," he said quickly. "That's just how she is. It's her humor." That made it worse. I wasn't angry because she said it. I was shattered because he didn't even flinch. Dinner went on. I sat at the table, nodding, smiling, laughing when expected. Pride kept me upright. Denial kept me seated. She poured wine with her polished nails and spoke about wedding colors, as if the text didn't exist, as if I wasn't humiliated. This is the cost, I told myself, of being the outsider, the joke, the one they tolerate. I remembered all the little moments, how she never hugged me, how she forgot my name at a family reunion, how she once said I wasn't what she pictured for her son. I let it slide every time. For him. We talked about the weather, catering, seating charts. No one mentioned the text. They laughed, passed bread, complimented the wine. She met my eyes once, briefly. No guilt, no shame. Just triumph. It wasn't a slip, it was a weapon. And everyone at that table was in on it. After dinner, I excused myself and stepped into the guest bathroom. The door clicked shut behind me. I didn't cry. I stared at my reflection under the soft yellow light. My lipstick had faded. My eyes looked tired. I whispered, "Don't let this be your story." Because I knew this feeling. I'd lived it too long. Standing there, I thought of every time I chose peace over pride, every time I nodded through insults, every time I became smaller to make someone else comfortable. Not anymore. I walked back out, sat at the table like nothing had happened. I smiled at her, a warm, polite, perfect smile. But that night, something inside me shifted, a silent tectonic change. That night, I didn't sleep, not because I was hurt, but because I started planning. I woke before dawn, unsettled. The sting from dinner hadn't faded. I brewed black coffee, took a short walk around the quiet block, journal in hand. I paused under a street lamp and reread a note my therapist once gave me. When people show you who they are, believe them. I shivered, reminding myself I already glimpsed who they are. Back home, I checked the wedding to-do list, florals, seating, timelines. But the dress fitting loomed largest. I whispered to myself, no one will remember a cruel text when they see me walk down that aisle. I poured another cup and let the steam rise. At the boutique later, the air smelled faintly of jasmine and champagne. Lucian arrived first, greeted by the owner with exaggerated warmth. I entered behind her, feeling like a shadow. I slid into my gown, but it was unmistakably too tight, 2 sizes smaller. Lucian appeared at the fitting curtain and quipped, "Perhaps gelato in Italy wasn't the smartest choice." My cheeks burned. I forced a laugh. "Confidence doesn't come in standard sizes," I said quietly. The seamstress apologized, said dresses got switched. I nodded, but inside I recognized the pattern. This wasn't clumsiness, it was calculated. Later, I made my way to the venue to collect printed invitations. I felt fragile, protective of what little dignity I had left. The manager handed me the framed sample. They looked proud, until I read, "Lucian Marrow and Rosalind Varon cordially invite you." My name, somewhere between lines, was gone. Invited in name, but erased in identity. The room hushed. Guests glanced at me. Confusion, curiosity. I cleared my throat and said, "Actually, it should read Ulesia Varon." The manager stuttered, fumbled. The damage was done. Whispers. Guests snapped photos. Lucien hovered behind, expression blank. I retreated to the parking lot, hands trembling on the steering wheel. I replayed the boutique and invitation in my mind. These were not mistakes. They wanted me small, invisible. Their cruelty was precise. I pulled out my phone, typed to Bennett. "Issue with invitations. See you soon," he replied. "Printer error. Mom handles these things." No concern, no defense. I deleted it, breathed. They expected a fight. I offered stillness. I drove to a nearby park as twilight settled. Couples posed for wedding shots, palms framing their smiles. I watched them and felt the weight of years of silence. My mother's voice echoed, "If they can't see your worth, don't offer them your mirror." I closed my eyes, feeling the whisper in my veins. I'd handed Lucian my reflection for too long. I sat under a gnarled oak, its leaves whispering overhead. I whispered back, "Not yet, not this time." The night swallowed the park. I rose and drove home in darkness, resolve solidifying in my chest. The air was cool and still as I sat across from Brielle at that quiet cafe in Buckhead. We chose it on a whim, something light and simple before the chaos of the rehearsal dinner swallowed us whole tomorrow. The irony didn't escape me. An Italian cafe, the day before my Italian soon-to-be mother-in-law would smirk her way through another meal pretending I didn't exist. Brielle stirred her espresso, her eyes scanning my face the way only a best friend's could. "You sure you're good?" she asked, resting her chin on her hand. I nodded, too quickly. "I'm managing." It wasn't a lie. I was managing, by keeping the lid on everything that should have cracked me open weeks ago. She smiled, though a little sadly. "You're tougher than you let on." The waiter, a young guy, maybe early 20s, brought us our check. His eyes caught my phone screen as it lit up. Lucian's name. I saw the flicker across his face. Something paused in him. I didn't think much of it. Not yet. When Brielle excused herself to the restroom, he came back. "Ma'am," he began, his voice unsure but careful. "That name, Lucienne. Is she your future mother-in-law?" I nodded, slowly. He swallowed. "I saw a phrase on your phone just now. Invita la porca grassa. It's not polite." I blinked. "I've seen that before. A text she sent to my fiancé. He said it was some family joke." He shook his head. "It's not a joke. It means, invite the fat pig to dinner." The words landed like a brick. I went cold. The world didn't spin. It narrowed. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just sat there, staring at the edge of my untouched biscotti. "They always knew I wouldn't understand," I muttered. "I'm sorry," he said gently, placing the check down. I tipped him generously, not because I was grateful, but because he gave me something the people closest to me refused to. Honesty. Back home, I stared at my phone. The original message. The one Bennett brushed off. The one Lucian sent with a little smile on her lips. They never expected I'd learn what she said, never thought the language would escape them. It wasn't careless, it was deliberate. Calculated cruelty disguised in foreign words. And Bennett? He saw it. He read it. He understood every syllable. But he said nothing. My throat was dry, but my hands were steady. I felt something crack. Not loud, but final. The kind of crack that doesn't split you open, just changes the shape of who you are. I whispered, "What else have they hidden in plain sight?" My thumb hovered over a new message to Bennett. Then I backspaced it all. He didn't deserve a warning shot. Confrontation now would just make me look unhinged. No, that wasn't the play. I reached for my journal, the one I stopped writing in after college. Page after page, I listed them all. Every offhand comment, every harmless jab, every omission, and every silence. I turned their disrespect into ink and evidence. And when Brielle got back, she sat down and looked at me. "You okay?" I smiled. For real this time. Bitter, clear. It's time I stopped pretending this is okay. That evening, rehearsal details flooded the family group chat. Lucian, ever the queen of veiled comments, wrote, "Can't wait to see what you wear, dear. Make sure it's not too tight." I typed back, "Sure." Bennett followed up. "Everything okay?" My reply, "Peachy, just finalizing my speech for the rehearsal." Let them squirm. I opened the text one last time and hit print. The paper slid out slowly, each line crisp, unforgiving, black and white proof of who they were behind my back. As I held the paper, I spoke softly. They thought I wouldn't understand, but I'm done playing dumb. The restaurant had that dim, polished glow people pay far too much for. Soft lighting, polished cutlery, flowers too fragile to smell. I sat at the far end of the table, pretending to sip from my glass of white. The clink of forks and stiff laughter bounced off the walls. Around me, a perfectly constructed evening spun its hollow charm. But all I could hear was that message, that one damn message. Lucian raised a glass. To family, to tradition, to love that sees beyond borders. She was in her element, smiling just enough, hands clasped just right, the queen of curated elegance. I smiled too, but mine wasn't rehearsed, it was loaded. Bennett sat beside me, shifting. He hadn't looked me in the eye all evening. When our elbows brushed, he didn't move, didn't lean in either. Just stillness. That kind of stillness that says everything without words. The appetizers came out. I waited until everyone had their portions. Until the wine had loosened their faces. Then I stood up. "I'd like to say something." My voice was steady, calm, not cold. Forks froze mid-air. Bennett blinked. Lucien's smile stiffened. "I've been told the rehearsal dinner is a time for gratitude, so here goes," I said. "Thank you, Lucien, for welcoming me, and for texting your son in Italian, thinking I wouldn't understand." The table fell into a slow, crumbling silence. I pulled the printed message from my clutch, placed it gently beside my plate. "Invite the fat pig to dinner." "That's what you wrote, isn't it?" Bennett's jaw clenched. Brielle, across the table, dropped her fork. Someone on Lucian's side of the family gasped. I didn't look around. Lucian didn't deny it. Her hands folded tighter. "That wasn't meant for interpretation." "No," I interrupted. "It was meant for exclusion, for cruelty, for cowardice." Bennett stood up. "Yule, let's not do this here." "Why not?" I said, louder now. "Because the truth makes your mother uncomfortable. Or because you've been complicit in keeping it from me." I could feel the tremble in my fingers, so I folded them behind my back. I wouldn't give them the image of a woman shaking. Lucien turned her head, voice flat. "You're being emotional." I laughed. Just once. "Emotional is how you describe someone you underestimated. You called me a pig behind closed doors. Now you're choking on your own script." No one moved. The staff stood still by the entrance. Bennett looked pale. "I came into this family with respect. I brought my whole self. And what did I get? Backhanded comments, fake smiles, and an insult dressed up in a foreign language. I reached down, picked up the paper, folded it once, and tucked it back into my bag. You don't have to like me, but you will no longer talk about me like I'm furniture you forgot to polish. I turned to Brielle. Let's go. Lucian's voice came low and forced. This is not how a bride behaves. I stopped, turned back one last time. No, I said, this is how a woman behaves when she's finally done pretending. And with that, I walked out, not storming, just steady, every step louder than their silence. I woke up to sunlight cutting across the ceiling, the kind that doesn't feel warm, just invasive. My phone buzzed twice before I even sat up. Missed calls. Bennett. A message from his sister. Lucian's upset. She says you humiliated the family. The word family felt sour on my tongue. I sat up slowly, feet hitting the cold floor. Last night didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a wound that hadn't closed, but at least it stopped pretending it wasn't there. Brielle had spent the night on my couch. She appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs. Coffee, she said, offering one. And no, I didn't read any of the group chat, but your face says I probably should have. I nodded, took the mug, sipped once. She said I humiliated her, I murmured. After she called me a pig. Brielle shrugged. People like her don't think they're ever wrong. They just think you're inconvenient for noticing. There was no rehearsal left, no wedding dress steaming on a hanger. I pulled it from the closet anyway, laid it across the bed, not out of sentiment, but to look it in the face, to know that version of the future was no longer mine. A knock at the door. I opened it to find Bennett, alone, hair tousled, no tie, sleeves rolled like he hadn't gone home. I need to talk, he said. I don't need to listen, I replied, but stepped aside anyway. He walked in, stood awkwardly by the window. She's hurting. You caught her off guard. I raised an eyebrow. That's your first thought? He rubbed his face. No, yes, I'm angry too. But I didn't know what she texted. I thought it was just some cultural thing. You're fluent in Italian, I said. You could have told me weeks ago. You could have told me when I asked. His silence was a confession. I didn't want to start a war, he said. You didn't want to take a side, I corrected. Which means you did. He sat on the arm of the couch, staring at the floor. She's your mother, I said. But I was supposed to be your partner. He looked up. I still want that. I shook my head. You want convenience. You want calm. You don't want confrontation, even when I'm the one being torn apart. Bennett didn't argue, and maybe that's what stung the most, how quickly silence became his armor. I can't walk into that ceremony tomorrow, I said. Not as someone's performance piece. His jaw tightened. So, that's it? No, I replied. That's me. Choosing me. Bennett stood, walked to the door. She'll never admit she was wrong. I'm not waiting for her to, I said. But I'm also not marrying into silence. When the door shut behind him, I exhaled. Later that day, I boxed up the dress, put the ring back in its case, and wrote one message in the family group chat. The wedding is postponed indefinitely. Thank you all for showing me who you really are. Then I turned off my phone. There was no dramatic scream, no tears flooding the carpet. Just the stillness of clarity, the kind of stillness that isn't empty, but earned. The morning air felt sharp, like it was trying to keep me awake. I stood in front of the mirror, fastening the last button on my charcoal suit jacket. I'd chosen it deliberately. Clean lines, quiet authority. No lace, no sentimentality. Just presence. The stack of documents on the counter caught the reflection of light from the window. My name was printed across the top of the first page. Bold, professional, undeniable. For the first time in months, it didn't make my stomach turn. It steadied me. Bennett's text pinged in right then. Go show them who you are. The irony almost made me smile. I used to want his mother's approval so badly. Now I was walking into her world, holding proof she'd spent years trying to erase me from it. By the time I arrived at the Buckhead office, the parking lot was already packed. Photographers, press vans, even a few family acquaintances, all circling for a glimpse of Lucian Marrow's next empire move. Inside, assistants were adjusting microphones, setting champagne flutes on white linen tables. It wasn't a celebration yet, it was a stage. I spotted Lucian first, poised near the podium, dressed in her signature ivory suit. She gave me a look that could cut glass. Bennett slipped in moments later, wearing a look of quiet panic under that polished smile. He didn't meet my eyes. When they called us to the front, I walked past Lucienne's table. She didn't move, didn't nod, just gripped her wineglass a little too tight. I took the podium. My pulse was calm, my breathing steady. "Good morning," I began, voice even, measured. "Today, we gather to celebrate partnership and vision." I paused, scanning the room. But more importantly, to acknowledge truth where it's due. A few heads tilted. I clicked the remote, and the presentation behind me lit up. Blueprints, design drafts, meeting notes, all carrying my signature. 2 years ago, I continued, this firm embarked on the Marrow Building Initiative, a $15 million project that will reshape the city skyline. It was my privilege to lead its design. I waited for the slide to change. My name and title appeared on the screen. Lead Architect Equity Partner, Yul Varen. The air tightened. Flashbulbs went off. Lucienne's public smile froze, then faltered as another slide came up. Her own press release, printed last quarter, crediting her daughter Rosalind instead. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I didn't come here to take anything that isn't mine," I said, steady as stone, "only to correct what was already stolen." The questions came fast after that. "Mrs. Marrow, why wasn't Mrs. Varen mentioned before?" one reporter called out. Lucian's lips parted, then closed again. Bennett tried to speak, but his words came out half-shaped, half-swallowed. The noise built around me, flashes bursting like lightning. Someone near the back called, "She deserves it!" Another voice echoed, "About time she gets credit." I stood there, composed, letting the applause wash over, but not through me. This wasn't triumph. It was correction. I turned to Lucian, who was now pale beneath the stage lights. "You once told me I didn't understand how business works," I said softly. "Turns out it's a lot like family. Only the contracts are more honest." The crowd erupted again, and I stepped down from the podium. My heart pounded, not from fear, from release. For the first time, I wasn't the outsider in the room. I was the one holding the truth, and everyone knew it. As the event broke apart, people started whispering. Staff exchanged glances. Reporters huddled. Lucienne tried to make her way toward me, heels clicking hard on the marble floor. She stopped, just inches away, low voice trembling. "You've humiliated me." I looked at her, really looked. For years, I'd seen only the polished surface she projected. Now I saw the cracks. "No," I said quietly. "You humiliated yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after it." I turned to walk away, but Bennett stepped in. "Yul, wait, please. You didn't have to do it like this." His voice sounded small, foreign. "You could have told me first." "I tried," I said, still moving toward the exit. "You just didn't want to hear it until there was an audience." He flinched. There was nothing left to explain. Not for now. I reached the hallway, the sound of the crowd fading behind me. I could still hear the cameras snapping, Lucien's voice rising. But it all sounded far away, like someone else's storm. By the time I reached my car, the first news alert had already hit my phone. Yul Varen named official architect of 15E Nalan's project amid Marrow family controversy. My face was on the thumbnail image. Calm, unreadable. I leaned back in the seat and exhaled. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like reclaiming oxygen after years underwater. Back at home, I kicked off my heels, opened my laptop, and watched the recording from the event. My name, clear, permanent, printed across the screen. I let the silence fill the room before saying out loud, "They wanted me invisible. Now they'll have to talk around me." I closed the laptop slowly, the corners of my mouth lifting just slightly. Tomorrow would bring chaos, no doubt. But for tonight, there was stillness. And it was mine. The morning light slipped through the blinds, soft and dull, like the silence that hung in the air. I didn't even need to reach for my phone. I knew the story would be everywhere. And it was. The headline sat bold and unavoidable. Crow contractor signs 15 nullos, deal with architect wife. There it was, my name. Not hidden behind Lucian's, not erased under Rosalind's, but front and center. Finally. But what followed was not what I expected. No buzzing phone. No messages from Lucien. Not even a dry congratulations from Bennett. I scrolled through our family group chat. Blank. No memes. No good morning texts. No snide comments. Just nothing. A void. I stared at the screen, half waiting for a ping that didn't come. That silence stung more than any insult. I thought I'd be relieved, but it felt like they were weaponizing absence. I called Brielle. "Have you seen it?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. She had. We talked briefly about how far the article had spread. "Is this their next strategy?" I asked her, more to myself. Silence? By afternoon, I was already halfway to Lucian's house. He had texted that morning, a generic invitation to dinner, masked as a talk, no emotion, no apology, just a time and address. The house hadn't changed. That same pretense of elegance, that same damn silence inside. Lucien opened the door like a stranger greeting a client. His lips moved, but it was just filler. "You look well. Come in. Bennett's on the way." No mention of the press event, no mention of the $15 million. Like it didn't happen. Inside, the air was thick with avoidance. Rosalind stayed in the kitchen, busying herself with something that didn't require attention. Bennett showed up late and went straight for the whiskey. Lucien made small talk about a supplier issue in Charleston. I didn't answer. I just pulled a copy of the contract from my bag and placed it, face up, in the center of the dining table. No one reached for it. No one said a word. Dishes clinked faintly in the distance. A spoon scraped a bowl somewhere. No one looked me in the eye. So I said what I came to say, later, alone in the library where Lucien was flipping through a ledger like it was 1992. "Why this silence?" I asked him. "Why act like nothing's changed?" He looked up, startled I'd even speak. "I withdrew," he said slowly. "I couldn't endure the spectacle anymore." I laughed, one dry, breathless laugh. "You mean the truth? That spectacle?" Lucien looked at me like I was the uninvited guest. "It's your moment," he muttered. "Take it, I'm done with it." "No," I said, stepping closer. "You're not done. You're dodging. Silence is easier than guilt." His jaw tightened. He stood up abruptly, walked out. Back in the dining room, Bennett sipped his drink and stared at the fireplace like it might offer a better family. Rosalind still didn't come in. "You knew, didn't you?" I asked, but no one answered. Just a slight flinch in Bennett's blink, a tightening in Rosalind's shoulders from behind the wall. That was all I needed. Late afternoon, as I was getting ready to leave, someone knocked on the front door. A young woman with a press badge stood there. "I'd like your comment on today's..." "Silence," she said. "The public's wondering." I didn't blink. I stepped outside, crossed my arms. "Silence only works when people believe nothing's happening," I told her. She asked, "Do you feel vindicated?" I paused. "No," I said. "Just seen." She nodded, scribbled something, and left. It wasn't much, but it was mine. That evening, back in my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I let the dusk settle in naturally. I sat on the edge of my bed, opened my journal, and wrote, "The cold shoulder cuts deeper than an insult." I remembered something my mother said once, long ago, when she thought I wasn't listening. "They'll pretend you don't exist until you prove they must." I'm proving it now. I closed the book. Around 10 p.m., I got a message from an unknown number, a video file. No subject. I hesitated, then pressed play. It was Lucien, sitting alone in his car, red-eyed, crying. I didn't know what I felt, confusion, suspicion, maybe even pity, but not sympathy, not trust. As the screen dimmed, I whispered to myself, "I saw the mask slip, but is it regret or manipulation?" Either way, tomorrow, one of us would stop pretending. The morning broke heavy with expectation. The drive to headquarters felt longer than it should have been, every stoplight lingering too long, every thought louder than the car radio I never turned on. By the time I arrived, the front of the building looked like a movie set. Cameras flashing, reporters lining the stairs, microphones extending like weapons. They called my name, some politely, some with that tone that hunts for weakness. Security met me at the curb. "This way, Ms. Crow." They still used that name. I let them, for now. Inside the lobby, I caught familiar faces. Engineers, junior designers, even a few investors who once shook Lucian's hand like it was gold. Some looked at me with quiet respect. Others avoided eye contact, afraid to be seen picking sides. Lucian arrived minutes later, crisp in a white suit, expression carved from stone. Rosalind followed, her chin high, her silence rehearsed. They didn't greet each other, didn't greet me either. That said enough. As we were led into the auditorium, my heels clicked against the marble floor, steady, deliberate. Every sound felt amplified, every heartbeat felt recorded. When I stepped onto the stage, the screen behind me was still black. Reporters whispered among themselves. I could feel their curiosity hanging in the air, that collective lean forward before the moment something breaks. Then it did. The screen blinked on, and the firm's financials appeared. Row after row of trust funds, projects, partnerships. But the real shock wasn't the money. It was the names. Mine. Over and over, attached to design credits that had been buried under Lucian's control. The room gasped. Someone from the back said under their breath, "We didn't see that coming." Lucian's face tightened. Her jaw set, voice trembling only slightly. "This information was released without authorization," she said. "It's an internal breach." I stepped forward, took the microphone from the podium. "No," I said quietly, but the room carried it. People deserved to see what was always mine. The slides scrolled, each project I'd built with my hands, my sketches, my vision. "The Marrow Courtyard," I said. "The East Lake design, the new Buckhead Tower. Every one of these, signed by me, erased by you." The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was recognition. Then the doors opened again. A tall man in a gray suit walked toward the stage, calm, confident, foreign. I knew his face, one of our Italian partners from the Milan project. His appearance wasn't scheduled. That was what made the room turn cold. He waited for the interpreter, but then waved him off. "No need," he said, his accent heavy but clear. "We worked with her," he said, pointing at me. "Only her. Her design brought our contract to Atlanta. Her vision, her hands." The words hit like thunder. Cameras clicked. Reporters started shouting questions. Lucienne froze, the air around her shifting, her certainty slipping. I didn't move. "You didn't see me," I said, meeting her eyes. "Now you can't ignore me." Lucienne's mask cracked. "You think this spectacle makes you right?" she snapped, grabbing for the mic. "You leaked confidential data, manipulated this firm's reputation. You've weaponized the media against your own family." "Family?" I said, steady. "Family protects. You erased." The press leaned in closer. Lucienne's voice wavered, her words tangled. She turned to her attorney, desperate for footing. I didn't wait. I opened my folder, held the audit pages high. "These are your signatures," I said, my voice sharp. "Every deal you claimed is yours. You signed over my work, my equity. This isn't exposure, it's accountability." A murmur rose. Reporters cross-checked with the digital data flashing behind me. The math matched. The betrayal was documented, black and white. Lucienne's defenses fell apart right there under the lights. Rosalind looked away. Even Bennett, standing in the corner, had no words left. The air shifted. Some people clapped, hesitant, cautious. Others just watched, processing the fall of a woman who'd controlled the narrative for decades. Lucienne backed away from the mic, eyes wide. "You'll regret this," she whispered, barely audible. "I already regretted staying silent," I said. The next moments blurred. Reporters calling my name, cameras flashing too bright to focus. Bennett stepped closer, his hand hovering near my arm, unsure if I'd allow him near. I didn't step back. He didn't speak, but I saw it, the apology that words couldn't carry. I gave him a small nod. "Thank you," I whispered, just enough for him to hear. Lucian turned away, shoulders shaking, her exit caught in every frame of every camera. The empire she built on quiet deceit was unraveling, in public view, under her own signature. By the time the press conference ended, the room buzzed with half-formed questions, whispers of lawsuits, disbelief. I gathered my papers, tucked them neatly into my folder, and walked off the stage. My hands trembled, not from fear, from release. Outside, the sun was blinding. I paused on the steps, closed my eyes, and breathed. The air felt different, lighter. Someone from the crowd shouted, "Miss Crow, what's next for you?" I opened my eyes, looked straight into the cameras, and said, "This was only the beginning." And as I walked toward the car, the noise behind me faded, replaced by the quiet I'd learned to own. They thought silence would bury me. Instead, it became my stage. The porch was quiet, not the kind of silence that used to hold me hostage, but the kind that feels earned. It was just me, barefoot on the old wooden boards, cicadas humming in the trees, dusk bleeding into the trees like ink on old paper. I could hear the wind move through the magnolias. Nothing in that moment screamed. Not the walls, not the memories, not even me. My phone buzzed. "Bennett, I need to speak the truth tonight." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I knew what he meant, knew it would come, and I knew I was ready. Inside, the air still smelled like lemon oil and old regrets. I walked past the living room, stopped at the mantel. My engagement ring, that tiny, hollow promise, was still there. I picked it up, turned it in my fingers, then set it back down, gently, like I was done burying things with ceremony. I sat down and waited. When he came in, his shoulders sagged in a way I hadn't seen before. Not tired from the day, tired from carrying something that didn't belong to him, or maybe did. He looked at me the way people do when they know they've run out of time. "I knew what she said that day," he began. "I translated it, every word." He didn't look away. That was new. "I didn't stop her. I didn't correct her. I let you stand there, let her spit in your face and act like you couldn't understand." His voice cracked, but he kept going. "It wasn't ignorance. It was cowardice. I didn't want to lose my place in this family. I thought if I stayed quiet, it'd all blow over. But it didn't." He swallowed. "You didn't break, Yule. You got louder. You outgrew all of us." And just like that, the air between us got heavy. I felt the burn behind my eyes, but I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just said what I'd already told myself 100 times. I already knew. We sat in that truth for a moment, not as enemies, but as people who finally saw each other clearly. The next morning, I packed, not rushed, not dramatic, just folded up what I needed, let the rest stay with the ghosts. Lucienne showed up like she always did. Last minute, perfume too strong, timing too perfect. "You can hate me all you want," she said, "but you're still part of this family." I zipped the last suitcase. "That title disappeared when you chose silence over decency." She didn't answer. Didn't need to. I walked to the front door, didn't slam it, just closed it with the kind of calm I used to think belonged to other people, people who had peace. The estate stood behind me, tall, beautiful, rotting on the inside, like everything I had walked away from. The drive to my new studio felt like breathing for the first time in months. The kind of breath that comes from knowing you're not walking into a fight. You're walking into something that's finally yours. The sun hit the windows just right, warm, not blinding. I stepped inside. The studio was small. Bare walls, one long table, a coffee machine that worked when it wanted to, and on the far end, pinned to a board, a sketch. Italian courtyard, family-style layout, not built yet, just lines, curves, shadows, but it felt alive. They tried to erase me, and ended up making space for everything I needed. I sat down, rolled up my sleeves, ready to work. Then came the ping, a message from Milan. "We'd like you to lead the project. You brought the vision. We want your voice." I smiled. Not the kind that says, "I win," just the kind that says, "I choose." Later that evening, I sat alone, coffee in hand, lights dim, the city murmuring outside. And I wrote, "Sometimes power isn't shouting, it's staying." I thought back to who I was when this started, quiet, unsure, trying to earn a seat at a table built to shut me out. Now, I don't need that table. I don't need them. I closed the journal with one sentence left on the page. I'm finally home. Not all storms come to destroy. Some come to clear the path. And in the softest silence I'd ever known, I began a letter, not to them, but to the version of me who used to believe being quiet was safer. Dear future me, don't forget, silence never saved you.